Crime and Corruption, or VACC, pursuant to the authority given to me by its board, I am respectfully submitting the following position of the VACC. The VACC is respectfully requesting this august body to recommend the investigation of the following persons in connection with the anomalous purchase and administering of the Vacc vaccine to more than 833 Filipino children. For plunder, President Benigno S. Aquino III, former Budget Secretary Abad, former Health Secretary Garin, former Health Secretary, Undersecretary Boygaco, former Undersecretary Hartigongo, Undersecretary Lilibet David, Undersecretary Bayugo, Undersecretary Taino, and Assistant Secretary Lyndon Lisuy, ASEC Nest Santiago, and other persons named herein, which we will submit to this honorable committee. Plunder, Your Honors, under Republic Act 7080, as amended, was committed when these persons, in connivance with subordinates or other persons, have amassed, accumulated, or acquired ill-gotten wealth through a combination or series of overt or criminal acts as described in Section 1D in the aggregate amount of more than 50 million pesos. In brief, Your Honor, it has been shown in the series of hearings being conducted by this committee that former Secretary Abad, in a memorandum for the President after finding a source, therefore, recommended the release of the amount of 3.5 billion pesos from the general fund, notwithstanding the fact that such amount was not provided for in the GAA or any supplemental budget. Such fund was thereafter released, evidently upon express authorization of then President Aquino. We say the release was authorized by former President Aquino because, upon conversation with two former presidents, whose names we will no longer mention, they informed us that such a release of such a magnitude could not have occurred without express presidential imprimatur, either verbal or written. The release of the funds to the DOJ happened after President Aquino met at least twice with officials of Sanofi, thus leading to the reasonable conclusion that President Aquino extended favors to the said company under the circumstances. The irregularity becomes more pronounced in view of the admission of Yusek Hartigongo that the vaccination program was, quote, politically motivated, unquote. Likewise, President Aquino could not have been unaware that the vaccination project was to be undertaken in an election year during a campaign period, as in fact it commenced in April 2016, right smack in the middle of the campaign, and in areas where the voting population was most concentrated. As proven during the hearings, Vacc was also approved by the FDA and exempted from the rule that only those approved for listing in the Philippine Drug Formulary could be legally procured by the government with undue and indecent haste. In fact, the funding for the purchase of Vacc had already been approved prior to its approval by the FDA and its exemption from the formulary. Secretary Garin and other DOH officials were evidently in cahoots with President Aquino and the other above officials when they conspired, connived, and confederated to A, formulate a vaccination program that was supply-driven, not demand-driven. It appeared that such program was top priority when it was not. C, administer mass vaccination to children of school age indiscriminately without regard to their medical history, and undertake such mass vaccination with as much haste as possible when clinical trials were still incomplete. The above should be taken in the context of the demonstrated facts that Sanofi, through its local distributor Zoelig, was the only seller of the vaccine. Number two, there were at the time of procurement legitimate and valid questions raised by experts as to the propriety of the effectivity of the vaccine and its unit pricing. And three, the delivery of near expiry vaccines, which should have been either not accepted or given free. In addition, the amount of 3.5 billion pesos for the vaccination program may have violated the ruling of the Supreme Court in Araulo versus Aquino, 1 July 2014, with respect to the Development Acceleration Program. In sum, there is overwhelming evidence to the effect that President Aquino, in conspiracy with the others named, illegally funded a vaccination program that was conceived in violation of legal and administrative protocols, and that it consented to or tolerated the misdelivery by Sanofi of numerous lots of untested vaccines, and under a suspicious procurement and pricing scheme, which may have resulted in kickbacks and other illicit profits for the participants in the nefarious scheme. As to the element of amassing wealth, there is the principle that he who stands to profit from the effects of a crime is presumed to be the author thereof. In order to reveal the money trail, there is need for the Anti-Money Laundering Council, Your Honors, to check the bank accounts of all concerned and to freeze their assets if warranted. These measures are provided for in RA 9160 as amended and the IRR of the AMLC dated August 6, 2003. Since it appears that the crimes committed by the above persons are among the predicate crimes under Section 3I and 3 and 4 thereof. The officials of Sanofi must also be identified and charged together with the aforementioned officials in order for them to be indicted as co-conspirators if warranted. Committed to helping the NBI, tasked by DOJ Secretary under DO 763 dated 4 December 2017, in a case built up by interviewing witness and collating other evidence. With respect to violation of RA 3019, the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, Your Honors, we respectfully respectfully suggest that this body recommend the filing of charges for violation
Point of
thereof.
order, Mr. Chairman.
What's your point of order?
Yes, we are here and have invited resource persons to shed light on this controversy. There are issues of the efficacy of the vaccine, etc. We have resource persons. These are investigations. This is an investigation in aid of legislation. With all due respect to Attorney Topacio, he comes around with all kinds of charges. I have not heard him say anything about the issue of Sanofi having committed any indiscretion, etc. He is not a resource person. And we have a rule here in the Senate that we allow resource persons to speak, not counsel. Okay, he may be representing the VACC, but this is not an adversarial proceeding. This is a investigation in aid of legislation, and I want to emphasize that. He charges the former president, cabinet members of plunder. Mr. Chairman, you know, these are legal conclusions, which I respectfully submit, should be brought to the proper forum, the Ombudsman. We should take extra care about besmirching the reputation of people, Attorney Topacio. The people come here as resource persons of the committee. They are not, you know, you come up with charges of blunder, etc. I don't think this is proper, Mr. Chairman. That's why I raised this point of order.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, if I may
I have a
respond.
point of order, if you can rule on it.
The representation of Mr. Topacio was that he represents VACC. Are you here as counsel of VACC or are you representing VACC?
I am representing
You're a member of
VACC in
VACC.
pursuant of the authority
And your
given to
position
me.
is that there are people who should be charged by reason of this investigation.
We are not charging anyone, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, Messrs. Chairman. We are merely suggesting respectfully to the committee that in
But
its committee report.
Are you reading from a charge sheet?
No, Your Honor, I am not.
And what is that? What is the purpose of that then?
This is denominated, Your Honor, as position paper of the Volunteers Against Crime and Corruption. These are recommendations, Your Honor, suggestions, respectful suggestions to the committee that in their committee report, these suggestions may or may not be included. These are just suggestions, Your Honor, not charges, not accusations.
Well, like I said, we want to know where this is headed. Are you about to conclude? How many
Yes, Your Honor, in
pages?
2 minutes, Your Honor, I will be concluding.
All right, we'll just let you finish para hindi na magulo.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. With all due respect.
Never mind,
to-
just go ahead and finish.
Yes, Your Honor. Lastly, Your Honors, for violation of BP 881, we urge the committee to see whether there was a violation of the provisions of the Omnibus Election Code with respect to the dengue vaccine, particularly sections 261, O, and V, or the so-called election ban. And we wish to announce in one sentence, Your Honor, that the VACC will assist those willing to pursue a class suit.
Well, you can stop your advocacy.
Yes, Your
Just
Honor.
stick to the issues.
Yes, and this is the final one, Mr. Chairman. We respectfully call on this honorable committee to recommend to the FDA or any proper government agency to cause the blacklisting of Sanofi Pasteur from doing business in the Philippines for its alleged acts of instigating and
on your own cognition as a lawyer. I only allowed you because part of the investigation ay kasama yung possible malfeasance, misfeasance, and non-feasance
Yes, Your
that this
Honor.
committee or this chairman has already recognized, and